Hello and welcome to Think Design Work Smart YouTube channel. Today we have a very interesting discussion about the early days of the Global Day of Coderetreat. And of course, because of that, I have with me Corey Haines, who started this crazy idea, and Jim Hurne, whom I worked with for 5 or 6 years. I don't even remember on the Global Day until we retired. So hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Well, staying at home.
Staying at home, yeah. Um, I think we could start in a chronological way. How did this start? Um, Even with the code idea, I mean, probably most people don't know. So I would ask you, Corey, first of all, how did this start?
Um, well, Coderetreat was in 2009, and there were a few of us who were talking about practice and working around sort of focused practice, and came up with this idea of a day where we would work on a problem and be able to take away the goal of finishing and allow us to work on sort of the minute by minute refactorings and the minute by minute design thoughts that go into coding in a way that was free from pressure and free from that inevitable, I want to cut a corner, I've got to cut corners because I have to get this done. And then that was 2009. And then over the course of that year, I came to Bucharest in, I believe it was May of 2009, and talked to Alex and Maria, and then they took it. The thing I loved about it was that through the course of 2009, I flew back, continued doing code retreats in the States, and then Alex and Maria did them, I think pretty much primarily in Romania, but I think maybe in a country or two around. And then the following year in 2010, I think January, I went back to Romania, and then it was sort of a comparison of notes. And there were some differences, like Alex and Maria had been experimenting with some things like what does it look like to do in multiple languages, what the three sort of canonical questions that we ask at the end of the day of the what did you learn, what surprised you, what are you going to do differently moving forward. Alex and Maria had sort of brought those into it and were using it, and that was absolutely a great way to sort of end the day. And then through the course of 2010, I had just gone and wanted to do a code retreat. I think my goal was like 10 that year, and to travel around and do 10 through the course of 2010. I think I ended up at 11 or 12 or something. And then that flew into 2011. And I think 2010 was when I met Jim, or was it 2009? I think it was 2010 when I met Jim. I came to Pittsburgh and did a code retreat. And then 2011 came around and they were happening. So everybody had started doing these. And you had come in, Adi, early on, and Jim was doing them. And it was a really exciting time to see people doing them in Europe and people doing them all over the world. And I think it was, in my mind, it was like August of 2011 or something, like really middle of the summer. And I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if we just had a day when we had, like, I don't know, 20 cities around the world? Like, what if we could fill every time zone or something like that? Like, we had 20 cities all doing it on the same day, and do Skype calls to hand off as the time zone, and just sort of a really fun way of bringing the community together, because we had already started having we had the Codereteat website and the discussions, and there was discussions going on and people writing blog posts, and I think I just had the idea of like bringing what a community kind of thing to do on one day, because it was global. And then my memory is that I wrote this blog post, and I think I wrote it on the Codereteat site because I've been looking for it and I can't find it. But it was just like, what if we all did it on a day? And then that's when it sort of started taking off, and YouTube stepped in and like made it happen.
Yeah.
Like I waved my arms and like more of a figurehead kind of thing, and I knew the people and knew connections and made connections. But it was really exciting from my perspective because the community stepped up and YouTube stepped up and started doing like the training calls and getting all of that together. And it was a really cool thing to see, the like everybody coming together to make this a reality. And then I had the silly idea to fly to Australia and do the first one, and then fly to Honolulu and do the last one, which was very much just a silly idea to capstone it and like have people think about it and see it. And so, yeah, so we did that and put together that janky little Coderetreat Live website. And I remember very well Honolulu because we had maybe 4 people there, 4 or 5 developers, and someone not a developer had come with their son, who was a teenager maybe, and had like just seen about it and had come, and he wasn't really that, like he wasn't a doesn't program kind of thing, but he was super interested. And it was great because he paired with people and they showed. And then somewhere I have the video of the final, because Coderetreat Live, when one of the Coderetreats would end, you'd hit the like done button, and it would ripple through. And I remember I had a video of hitting stop or done on the Honolulu Coderetreat, and it just like, and at that point there were no more in the running or beginning, and all of them were done. And it was, maybe you have a better number, but I think it was either like in the 90s or in the 120s of cities. Like it just blew up. And I think very much a testament to you all, especially the 2 of you, for like wrangling everybody together and teaching.
I have the archives here. And I was looking at them. So in 2011, we had 90 cities.
That's yeah. I remember like just being blown away.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my memory of leading up to the first one. I'd love to hear Jim's and yours too, what it was like.
Yeah, so I distinctly remember that first podcast where you floated this idea of the Global Day of Coderetreat. And I remember reading it and going, whoa, that's a really cool idea. Hey, Corey, how can I help? And then and then Adi basically did the same thing. He reached out to you and said, how can I help? And so we got on a video call and then kicked it off from there. And I distinctly remember it because it was just before I was going to leave on a family vacation. So I remember like somebody else drive. I'm going to work on this Coderetreat stuff in the van next to my daughter, who was like a toddler at the time. And it was a wild time. And then I also very distinctly remember Corey went to Australia like the week before the Global Day of Coderetreat. And it was like just the week before that we decided to put that live Coderetreat app together. So I remember like sending Corey, hey, this is broke, and he's working on it over in Australia, and is kind of like really frantic. But then to see it all come together for that first Global Day of Coderetreat, where like it was in November and we started planning for it, like you said, in August. And the fact that we were able to get 90 cities and get all these facilitators trained up and get all these video chats coordinated. And we even got some sponsors lined up to help with Corey's travel expenses. To do all of that between August and November was just insane. And to see it all come together was a really amazing moment. And then I remember after that, we all sort of collapsed. And I didn't hear from Corey or Adi for like a month.
Exactly.
We were all catching our breath and trying to recover. But yeah, it was really good. We also actually revamped the Coderetreat site in that time. It went from bad to a little less bad because I was the one who did the work, and I'm not the greatest web designer, but it was enough of a facelift to make it look a little bit more legitimate for the Global Day of Coderetreat. But it was good.
I think we actually, it was either that year or the next year where I was in Sydney at the ThoughtWorks office, and it was the day before, and one of the designers there, she stepped up and she was just like, yeah, I'll help. And like redesigned the look and feel of it. I think it was 2012 that happened.
Oh, okay.
We ran through 2011 our initial fix. I had put together unstyled, and you styled it a little bit.
I also remember the first two several Global Day of Coderetreats. We managed everything through Google spreadsheets. Like to organize the cities, we threw up a Google form, and then like this location spreadsheet became the lifeblood of the event, where we were tracking all the facilitators. Had they been trained yet? Did they have a location to have their Coderetreats? Do they have sponsors? How can we help? Did we send out tweets for them? Like all this information in this low-tech spreadsheet.
Yep.
I remember I started writing some code attached to the spreadsheet to send emails, and I remember that I made a form. I don't know if then or later, I really don't know when, but I wrote a form where you could introduce things and then change the details. So that was very complicated thing to do with the script that they have in Google Scripts. It's something like JavaScript, but not really.
Yeah. And I seem to remember every year having to go into the database, and I would write a little export of all the cities and the facilitators and something into a CSV and import it into something. And yeah. What about you, Adi? What are your memories of that first one?
I remember that I was doing a lot of things for the community, but not only so clients and so on. So as Jim said, we were extremely busy and tired, and I know I was facilitating a lot of Coderetreats, and then when we started this, which is very interesting, and I think for me it was one of my first experiences of starting something with someone I didn't meet in person. And I started doing that more and more because me and Jim never met in person, only like this, remote. So it was very interesting to see that you could do something and trust someone you never met just because you had this common goal or this common idea. And for me, that was very powerful, and it's something that still remains now. I can find people that can be extremely trustworthy, and it's really amazing that this can happen. I remember that we needed to do so many things, and we tried to sort them down somehow. So we had the location, we were figuring out the difference between the host and the facilitator and trying to tell people not to do both. We started the trainings that I think me and Jim started the first time, and then other people took them over. I remember that I was waking up at crazy hours or going to bed at crazy hours because I had facilitation with Japan or with groups of people from the other part of the globe for me. And I think Jim was kind of crazy because he was like waking up at 3 to do something, some like these things. And I said, okay, when do you sleep, Jim? So there was a lot of passion, I think, for everybody, and that's why we were doing this. And it was very interesting. I think after 5 years or so, we said it's enough, and we were happy that other people took over. I think there were a few from Germany, a few from Romania. I think there was someone also. I don't remember exactly after that because I really quit. So we decided after 5 years that it's enough. It's like a term where you could just get things over. And I think people that came after started doing things a bit simpler than what we were trying to do. We were trying to find volunteers, but it's also very different because in the beginning you needed to push this thing a lot. So we needed to make a lot of trainings, and I think after 5 years of doing that, you had a lot of experienced people who could do trainings. But in the beginning, it was kind of difficult.
Yeah, and that's when I tell people about Coderetreat in general and like Global Day, especially in particular, one of the things that I think is the best testament to it, and the thing that I tell people that I'm most proud of, is that I think it was year 3 or year 4 that I just didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I just like stepped away and like I didn't make a big pronouncement. I didn't like, it wasn't a passing, it was just, I'm no longer doing things around Coderetreat. And the way I viewed it from sort of the new outside was that nobody noticed. Like it wasn't a hiccup, or it wasn't a like, oh, now we have to have leaders or anything. It was just, there's a community there, and there's people who are stepping up and doing these things, and you don't need a centralized person. And for me, I tell people my biggest pride is that I was part of building a community that didn't notice when I was no longer there, and actually continued to run better and better every year. And it was so exciting to see, like, just seamlessly. I mean, you two were kind of running it from the start anyway, so it wasn't as though there was I was doing something that was so essential to it, other than kind of figureheady kind of thing. But it was nice, and it seemed similar when you two stepped away.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of like, it just, people wanted to do this. And so the community had been built over the years, that there were already people to step into that leadership role.
Yeah, and that's for me, that's a lesson about agility and how things should happen. Probably not in many organizations, but if this would happen, I think everybody would be a lot happier and more productive.
Yeah. What was your experience like transitioning away from it, away from being the like leaders of?
For me, it was a relief, because I couldn't do it mentally. I couldn't do it anymore. After doing things repeatedly like that, it was like, okay, no, it's enough. I know it will happen. I see people who want to take over. I trust them. It's great.
Yeah. What about you, Jim?
Oh, I think one of the I'm like you. One of the things that I think is remarkable is how it's been able to continue, and how the baton has been passed several times now successfully. Like, there's so many organizations that they get a lot of momentum at first, and then when the founders step away, it just sort of falls apart. and that didn't happen with Coderetreat or the Global Day of Coderetreat. I know, like my last year that I helped organize it, we're like, hey, we're a little bit shorthanded. We need some help. So a bunch of new people stepped up. That, like Ivan and Alan in particular come to mind. They kind of stepped up and helped run it. And then after they stepped up, I then told them, hey, by the way, this is the last year I'm doing this. So next year it's all going to be you. And they're like, oh, great, thanks for, tricking us. But they did a really fantastic job. Like they completely they found an actual web designer, web developer to put together a beautiful Global Day of Coderetreat website, which I think is still the site today. And then they found ways to simplify the management of it, so it wasn't such a huge, a huge responsibility, and to somewhat decentralize it somewhat, and which I think breathed whole new life into the event and made it easier for people to join other new cities to join up and stuff, and it was really exciting to watch them like catch the same fire and the passion that the three of us had originally, and for them to just take it and run with it. And now I think there's like 4 or 5 other people who are involved with the Global Day of Coderetreat and keeping it running, and this is exciting.
Yeah, it is every year, like watching it and seeing, like, I don't know the people who are running it. It's so but watching sort of from the outside at how well it is being run, and how, while internally, just like with when we were active in it, it was sort of chaos behind the scenes, but after probably year 2, it was a little smoothed out. But it just seems like it's so smooth now, and like I love the time zone rooms. That I don't know if you all brought those in, or if that was post you, where there would just be chat rooms, video rooms per time zones.
So we started that, I think, when 2 or 3 years after we start this, we had the idea of the video booth.
Yeah.
But yep. I think they improved it a lot, so now it's a lot easier for people to join.
Yeah, and
I mean, the technology has definitely come a long way. When we started, there was like you said, Skype and Google Hangouts was basically the 2 main video chat technologies, and now there's so many more. And actually, one of the things I was reflecting on recently was how this year, with the pandemic, so many tech conferences have gone virtual, and I'm kind of thinking, whoa, well, the Global Day of Coderetreat was a little bit ahead of the times, and in that it was a global virtual, not necessarily a traditional conference per se, but like this global virtual event, and I was like, and in fact, through the years, we saw some people experiment with fully remote Coderetreats, where all the participants were remote during the Global Day of Coderetreat. And so I don't know what they have planned for this year, but I'm sure it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, there are discussions about that on the SoftwareCraft Slack channel, and how to try to do everything remote and techniques. So I think it's a new step of learning facilitation and hosting, but remote. And I think it's going on. It's adapting to the current situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's always really just about bringing people together and playing together. So it's you can do that with breakout rooms, or like figure out. I keep thinking about it, and I see people experimenting around it and trying it, and it's interesting because I keep falling back to things like when I would facilitate, part of everything was hearing all of the different pairs talking, and so you could have that like your ear goes up and you're like, oh, I just heard something that I recognize. I need to go over there and talk to them. And just subconsciously, after facilitating enough retreats, you subconsciously hear flags go off of just conversations, and you're like, oh, okay, let's go talk to these people and help them get over that hump, or more likely go in, sit down, ask an annoying question, and then get up and
Yeah, I remember I was facilitating in Belgium when you came, Corey, and I was living in Belgium at the moment, and I startled you. You said, "Why are you here?" So it was the first Codereteat in Belgium, and I think I was living there in France, in fact, but it was close to the border, and I said I need to join there. It's close, and so I remember that after that I started facilitating a lot with Eric, who was organizing many of them, and after a while people started asking me, why are you so annoyed? Why do you ask these annoying questions? And I was doing exactly this. I was sitting there and saying, why do you do this? And then walk away. And it was like, what do you mean?
like,
I don't know, figure it out.
Yeah, is it the right thing to do? I don't know. I don't know if it's the right thing, but just asking a question. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things about Global Day that's really exciting, I think, is the sheer number of people that are involved that are like doing it on that day. Because I think, like, I just looked, I think last year was like 153 cities or something like that. And it was so much more. I mean, I think my original idea was like 20. And then it just took off. And it's consistently been a good number of cities, which is, I'm not like, it's interesting to me that the whole thing has been able to keep legs and keep an interest and not and be like an annual event that people maybe look forward to, or it's a thing of maybe they never run a Coderetreat and there's not a Coderetreat city, but that year, the annual thing, they step up and do, because it doesn't seem like there's 150 cities worth of Coderetreats happening all the time through the year. So I wonder if having this annual event has helped Coderetreat as a thing and the format itself continue and not fall by the wayside as just another workshop kind of thing.
I think it helped a lot, and it helped the Coderetreat be more present and more known as a format, and also because you have these organizations where people typically don't have time or aren't that encouraged to go to such an event, but out of a sudden they start sponsoring something like that, and then people join, and I think their eyes open a bit, or they really like it, and it changes their world completely, because they see, oh, we can work like that. Amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really just keeping one of the things that I think helped contribute to it too was it was such a set format, and it was so tightly, like, I know in the early days I pissed off a couple people, tightly controlling, like, this is the format. Like, it's this, experiment all you want, don't call it a Coderetreat, let's go, so that when we did do this, people know what they're getting when they get to it, and then you can sort of, it's established itself.
Yeah, I continued with that because I know that there were quite a few people who said, I want to do a half-day code retreat or a 2-hour code retreat. It's not really a code retreat because really the whole experience of the whole day is a lot different than having just a couple of hours or half a day.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I loved that when there were a couple people, like I know JB was doing the legacy stuff and coming along with that idea of the family. So it was like, okay, this is a legacy code retreat. And then there was a coaches retreat, which was part of this underlying thing of like experiment and do these things and like do the 2-hour one or the half-day one, but look at what you're getting from the 2 hours. You can't get the same thing from a 2-hour event that you can get from the full day. That doesn't mean you can't get something important from that as 2 hours, but like look at what you're getting and then make it a different type of code retreat. Like this is a micro or something that separates it and puts it under the umbrella of code retreat family rather than trying to dilute what the full thing is.
Yeah.
And I think that I had a question for you all. One of my dreams has always been to be invited to a code retreat. And I actually last year had a person reach out to me to see if like they had a training client who they were going to do a code retreat for them, or the client had asked them if they knew how to do a code retreat. And the person had reached out to me and said, I saw your name was associated with it. Would you be willing to do this code retreat? And so I went and did it for this team. And it was really fun going down there and talking to them about like, they asked like, how are you associated with this?
Mm-hmm.
They like, oh, I kind of created it. Thing to do and do it's very much not a given that you've got the best person then. You know, you probably could get a better facilitator than me, but it was a lot of fun. Have you had that experience running into people telling you or explaining to you about what a code retreat is?
Well, I've heard it mentioned in context that sometimes surprise me. They're like I'll be at a conference or something, and some people will be talking about how they're like giving a junior developer advice on how they can improve their skill, and then they're like, oh, and of course you could go do a code retreat, and the junior developer's like, oh yeah, of course I could go do a code retreat. It's like, you know, talked about almost as casually as retrospectives are, or you know, some other common practice in our industry. And then I also had this interesting experience where I went to a conference and this guy pulled me over and he's like, hey, how you doing? And I couldn't remember who he was at all. And he's like, you trained me during the Global Day of Coderetreat, how to do Coderetreat. I've got all these ideas about how we could, different exercises we could do and stuff. I'm like, that is awesome. Go run with it. Post blog posts about what you're doing. And stuff like that. And it was like just last year, and I haven't been really involved in Coderetreat for what, like 3 or 4 years. And to still run into people that have that kind of passion for it was really encouraging.
Yeah, for me, at least in Europe, I think most of people know me because I was facilitating a lot of them. And I was doing these crazy tours, not during the Global Day, but outside. So I think I established my record when I had 5 code retreats in 7 days in another city. So
I remember that.
That was crazy. Like, when I'm there, typically people know that I know what Codereteat is, but I often hear people that you should go there, or as Jim said, and it's really nice. It's it shows that it's a validated format that can go by itself. And I think the power of it is that you have this structure, but inside you can put whatever you want. So you just have a skeleton. It's not like a workshop where you need to do this and this and that, and that's the end result. And it's based on the fact that we are passionate about what you do, and we want to be with each other while doing that. And I think that's why it's so attractive.
Yeah, and I think that with that skeleton, where you have you can go in and facilitate a code retreat, even if you're, not super experienced or not, you're just developer, and having that skeleton. And then I think it came out of a lot of the Global Day trainings and the Global Day stuff, having those a large catalog of things. I know that I'm pretty sure you worked on that to put together that catalog of, here are just some exercises you can do, and it's not a prescriptive. Like when I taught people, it was the very first one I had, like, this is what the first one looks like, and for the first session, and then you start, building from there on what exercises you pull in. But you can, as a new facilitator or as a not experienced developer, be able to just pick them and go draw them out of a hat. Like, I think the first one is important to do it in a certain way, but like the rest of them, just draw them from the hat. This is what they are, and you're guaranteed to have a fun day.
Yeah.
And that was one of the core things that I always tried to push for people. And I think that when we moved to the trainings, that the two of you and then the people that followed did such a great job of emphasizing for the folks. Because when you have 150 facilitators, or the first year when you have 90 facilitators, there's not 90 people who have facilitated a code retreat. And the two of you being able to step in and go, look, you don't have to have done it before. You're going to have a great day, and bolster the confidence of people.
Yeah.
I think that was very important during the first training, or at least the first year, if I remember well. I know what's your experience, Jim.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I remember both starting and ending training sessions with relax. If the format, if you follow the basic structure, you've got a lot of smart people in the room together. They're passionate. They're passionate because they're there on a Saturday, early in the morning on a Saturday. Even if you completely mess up facilitating, you're still going to have a fantastic day. And I would start the training and I would end the training with that. And then in the middle, after introducing the basic structure, going through some of the exercises you could do, then people would be like, ooh, that sounds like fun. Ooh, that's going to be a fun one to do with my group. I know they're going to really be challenged with that one. And to see people, the facilitators, start to get excited about it, I think that really helped them internalize what they were learning as well, so that they could go back and be very confident in how they facilitated.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely one of the things that makes it very easy for lots of people of varying skills to be able to take the code retreat and do it, is the fact that if you stay within the structure, then you can really mess everything else up and it'll still be great.
Yes. And I can attest to that, because I had days where I just messed up all of the facilitation, and then at the end of the day, everyone's like, this was a great day. And I'm like,
but only you know it, They don't know it, only you know it.
I'm going to stand here and smile and make bad jokes and ask annoying questions, and everyone else. But it is a good point that you bring up, Jim, of explaining, like, you got passionate people there. You got people who are excited. Everybody there wants this to be a successful day.
Right.
And when you have that many people who are trying to have a successful day, it's like you're going to have a successful day. And
So-
it's not, you don't have to be nervous about it.
What are the most weird things that happened to you? Because I can give you one example that was, for me, it was memorable. I was in Belgium at the Codereteat. I was facilitating with Eric, and there was this guy who was sitting at the desk and said, I came up with my solution. I worked with it home, and it's the only solution. It's the best. And that's how you should all make this, and I need to convince everyone that this is the only best solution. So he was annoying everybody, and I think the second or the third session I started pairing with him, and I was extremely calm, but I was still pushing towards like, look, do you think this is the most appropriate, like annoying questions, because I was trying in a way to demolish his building blocks, and giving situations like, well, do you have infinite memory to do that? Do you have, what if you don't have that much memory? What if, and so on. So, but he was extremely aggressive. And after 6 months, I think he even left earlier or something. And after 6 months, I met him again. I said, oh, he's back. I hope it won't be again. And he was so calm and said, oh, no, I got it. I understand how coding is. I said, wow, amazing. So you just need a bit of patience. And everybody was really literally afraid of him when doing this. So do you have such experiences like, I don't know, crazy facilitation experiences?
Well, I had one Coderetreat where halfway through, all the participants were like, yeah, this Coderetreat format's great, but we don't want to do it anymore. We just want to mob program Conway's Game of Life. Can we just do that? It was like unanimous. And I was like, well, this is your day. I'm just the facilitator. So if this is really what you guys want to do, that's fine. And then, at the end of the day, I did insist that we do the 3 questions, to encourage that they actually take something back from them. And they still got a lot out of the day. So even though we just completely blew up the Coderetreat, it was still a good experience for them.
Yeah.
And I had to it was an internal struggle for me. I was like, why don't they want to do this? And oh my goodness, did I just fail as a facilitator? They don't want to do this anymore, And I had to suppress those feelings and be like, this is okay. They're still getting something out of this. Just relax. But
ego crush for the facilitators as well sometimes.
Yes, that's right.
The thing for the developers there. Yeah. I had 2 big. One was early on, and I was actually facilitating with JB, and he tells a story too sometimes that there was, after the very first session, you always get those people who are just like, oh, I'm uncomfortable deleting my code. And almost always my experience had been that somebody, they're smiling when they say it. And it's just like that, oh, I don't want to delete my code and everything. And then everybody laughs and we all do it and you delete the code. And we had one early on where somebody 100% stonewall refused and brought up you're saying something bad about me. You're judging me if you're saying that my code should be deleted and all of that. And it was like this aggressive kind of feel. And it was just like, what? And I just remember being like, these are the rules of the game. If you don't want to do that, you can it's okay to leave, but everybody here, we're playing a game together. It's a fun day. This isn't a judge. Your code is bad. I mean, that's a given because you spent 45 minutes on it, and it's that's just a given. Everybody bad. So it's not a judgment about you, but we agree the rules to play. And that was, I think, one of the first, it was very early on, and I remember it being just wow, we have to deal with this. And then I think it was actually the second Global Day at the ThoughtWorks office in Australia. And I had brought up the constraint of like no Booleans, so like no if statements. And what does it look like to build this if you don't use if statements? And somebody was like, you can't program without conditionals. And I was like, I'm not saying no conditions. I'm saying no if statements and no like find alternate mechanisms for it. And I went into procedural polymorphism and all the annoying stuff like that. And this person was so adamant that this was stupid. Like this is the idea of programming without Booleans, that would never work in real life. And I'm like, oh, I wrote an if statement this morning. Like, I'm not saying don't do this, but what if? And they left. Like they kind of stored. If memory serves, and it may not because it just seems like a good story, I think they left as lunch was arriving. Which to me is the wrong time to storm out of a ping-pong activity. Like, it was good lunch. I mean, we always have good lunches. So, but I remember just this battle in the circle, and everyone else is just standing there, looking awkward, and railing about how stupid of an exercise that is. Like, okay. But it's so much of it came back to that. Over the years of running into people, that this is a common game we're playing today. And these are the rules of it. And if you abide by the rules, everyone's going to have a great time. And similar to what you said, Jim, when everyone unanimously wants to just switch over to doing a mob programming exercise of Conway's Game of Life, if everybody switches the rules, you're still in the game.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we have a great day because we're all doing this together. And it doesn't have to be that. But when one person decides that they aren't going to accept the commonly approved or commonly accepted or commonly taken rules, it throws it off a little bit. And
I've had it
that often.
I've had it happen actually pretty frequently where one person isn't totally buying into it, but they don't like disrupt everyone else. They just sort of go off into a corner and they do their own thing. And then I just let them do that. They're not being disruptive. They're not interfering with anyone else, and they're learning their own way. So that's okay too. But yeah, it's hard when you get that like that really strong personality in a room who like fundamentally disagrees with what you're doing.
Yeah.
But
this isn't real. Like understand this isn't real. We're just taking it to the extreme and going too far and all of those.
I remember that I was in Netherlands, and the Dutch have this culture of saying things very blunt, and they are proud of it. And I was in the intro, so 3 minutes of the Codereteat. I was explaining what's about, and someone from the audience says, "This is stupid." But very loud like that, annoyed almost. Okay, well, so it didn't even start, so already it was stupid. So I would try to explain, and yeah, I mean there are people like that who really are extremely aggressive. But as far as I remember, that person remained there in the room for the whole day and didn't complain after that. But in the beginning, it was like a challenge. This is stupid. Let's see what you do now.
Yeah. But thankfully, the vast majority of Coderetreat participants are not that way. It's it's the rare person who is strong in that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is when somebody comes and doesn't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
Most people come and I'm just gonna come hang out with my friends for the day and do this and get a good lunch.
And in some areas, in some cities, I think you have these regulars that meet up and they start becoming friends, or at least they know a lot of things together, and you start having these communities, these local communities that I think are amazing. And this format and this willingness to learn and to be together, to work together, to learn from each other, grew up, and I think that's the power of it all, in fact.
Yeah. Do you have any with regards to the organizing and running of Global Day, do you have any stories or memories of like when something went horribly wrong in the back that you had to like, oh crap, we gotta scramble to like figure out how to resolve this?
I think many things went wrong, but weren't that visible.
Yeah.
Like I think we had those applications where you were timing when it starts and when it ended, and sometimes something went wrong or crashed. And I think Jim was doing something at some moment, needed to refresh things, or I don't remember exactly. But
oh yeah, there was like a value in the Codereteat live database that was like causing the application to crash or something. So you're like trying to do a code fix or find the problem in the database on the fly during the event. I almost forgot about that.
So that was extremely weird, and people were writing to me on Skype, on Twitter, and like what's going on, and I don't know, let's check it. I don't know. And I think in a few hours it got fixed. But and I think that what was very interesting, that we took turns in a way. So I was staying 12 hours and Jim was staying 12 hours to oversee that everything works fine. That was a lot behind the scenes, and nobody saw that probably, but we just wanted to see that everything's going well.
Yeah. Well, I think another big reason why we didn't have a whole lot of problems, like, I mean, early on, the first couple of Global Days in particular, the video chats were very hit or miss. It was, we learned it was actually really difficult to coordinate like two different groups in two different time zones, being able to like coordinate their Coderetreats so that they lined up so that they could do a video chat together. And then of course you have all of the technical challenges with a video chat. Does their microphone hooked up right? Is there a big delay between the audio and the video and all of that? So initially that was very, very rough, but we very, very wisely told people, hey, look, the video chats are icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you can't do them, don't worry about it. And like, if the video chat thing totally breaks down, don't worry about it. If you feel overwhelmed facilitating and you can't post on social media what's going on, don't worry about it. And like, we tried to take away, all of the pressure that everything has to work perfectly. And so that, like, I heard every year we did it, we heard about a site that had like some sort of internet outage or something, but they were still able to go ahead and do their Coderetreat even though they were completely disconnected from everyone else. And so because it was highly distributed and we had set this tone that, hey, just because you're not plugging into the global community doesn't mean you shouldn't go forward. Even if little things went wrong, the event as a whole still happened,
Yeah. I remember that the first year of having to repeat that message of like,
yeah,
it's about your city.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the larger thing. The larger thing is simply the umbrella for the day.
Right.
Like, do your city, focus on your city, it's okay just to do a code retreat. It doesn't have to. And because we had so many new hosts and facilitators, there was that like nervousness of I've got to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Repeating on the day of the message from the training of like, look, it's just you're just getting some people together and doing this game. Like, it's okay not to do that. You're not failing, or you're not doing, you're not having a bad day because you weren't able to get on a video call with somebody where you choppily, where the voice and audio and video is disconnected, you wave. Like it wasn't a thing, and constantly repeating that to people.
But I remember then when we introduced video, as Jim said, it wasn't that nice and easy to use, but it brought more the idea of global when we had video, because otherwise people would say, oh yeah, whatever. But it was very interesting that when people starting to see each other and say, oh look, I don't know, Paul is in Germany and Alex is in I don't know where, in which city, and then people started seeing, and I really saw this amazement of a few times of the group that, wow, there are people coding in Australia and in Europe and in USA. Wow, we're 200 cities or something. Amazing. So that, I think the videos helped because you had that exchange, and sometimes you had people who knew each other, so facilitators or people from the group who knew each other and started having this conversation in between cities. So, hey, look, we done this, what did you do? We've done that. So they were starting to exchange, and after a while I think we started having this idea of giving the baton to a coach that was just starting. So because we always started earlier, then we were passing on to Americas somewhere, and typically, I don't know, to Canada or to USA. And I think I passed to Jim a few times. We were ending, he was starting. So, and I think that was very interesting because I don't know what happened. If maybe Jimmy, you can say what happened for the people's experience, because we were explaining what we had, so it was like a pre-retrospective. People were saying like their experience and what the sessions were and so on. I don't know how much that influenced you, because it was always like that. We were passing on, we were starting it, So Jim, do you know how this influenced, or if this thing, did the groups that you had have anything to learn from what we are passing, or it was just like that thing that is global? Did they ask, we want to do that they said?
No, so the ones that I facilitated, it was really interesting that they were so, because usually it was like, it's really interesting. I've never facilitated a Global Day of Coderetreat where less than 90% of the people have never done a Coderetreat before.
Yeah.
So because the Coderetreat format was so new to them every single time, that was really what they were focused on. And they enjoyed the video chats. They and like you said, it did bring this like global feel to the event, which was really awesome. But in terms of like taking ideas from a different city and stuff, that didn't totally materialize for my groups. But I think it's because we always had people who were brand new to Coderetreat.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had like a larger group of people who had done Coderetreat before, I think that aspect of it would have been a lot more interesting to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so we've been going for a while, and I think it's pretty amazing in kind of a good way that we haven't actually talked about Conway's Game of Life at all.
Yeah.
Which is perfect, because that's not really the important part of Coderetreat at all. We're talking about the important thing about Coderetreat. But there was one Global Day of Coderetreat memory and John Conway actually recorded a video message to everybody that was doing Global Day of Coderetreat one year, and that was really cool to hear from the guy who came up with the cell automation simulation that we used as the problem at Coderetreats, to talk to everybody like that. It was a pretty neat. And so, we circulated the video to all the cities and stuff. That was a cool moment, I think. That, like, this thing had gotten so big that it got the attention of the mathematician that we were basing all of the stuff on, to the point where he was willing to do a video message to everyone. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, that is cool.
But
yeah, and it's worth saying rest in peace since he died this year.
Indeed, yes.
A thing to see, but
it's kind of nice to think that in a small way, Coderetreat will help this man's legacy live on beyond his own time. There is something existential about that feels valuable.
Yeah, and reach to people that all of his stuff doesn't necessarily get out to day-to-day gamers, and this kind of opens up a whole nother group of people who hear about him and can look at some of the other stuff that he does. And
that's right.
So yeah.
Okay, so we've been like 1 hour into this. Do you feel like having some closing words?
Sure.
Or do you want to get into something else? Do you think there's something relevant that we need to add?
I don't think I have, Jim.
No, I'm excited to see where it goes next. I'm excited to see what the current generation and the next generation of organizers and facilitators take the formats, and how it's going to evolve and change and continue to enrich our global developer community.
Yeah, I see sessions coming up and people coming up with crazy ideas. I started trying to write a book about these games that you can use during the sessions, and I have counted 87 until now that I know and I use myself.
Wow.
But some of them are kind of rough. I think I wrote like a quarter of this book, but I still need to write a lot more. If I go to the end, probably it will be like a 400-page book, because it's a lot.
It's a reference manual. So
yes, exactly. So you don't need to read it necessarily, but you can choose out of that. And I'm sure there are many more session ideas like that people invented that I don't know, and I don't have there in my catalog.
Yeah.
I think that's the other cool thing, that people have written books about Coderetreat. I know Corey wrote one that was like based on all of his learnings from doing all these Coderetreats and the common patterns that he kind of pulled out of that. But there's other people that wrote books about it too, about the formats and stuff. And
I mean, Audie and Alex, you put your book out.
Yes, we wrote about facilitating and hosting, which was kind of a distillation of our experience of, I know how 7-8 years it was then when we wrote it. And still now people tell me that it's useful to have kind of a reference to that.
Yeah. I just looked. Mine came out in 2014. I actually thought it came out in 2013, but nope. I looked on Lean 14, so just a little over 6 years ago, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But it is neat. I think, like, when I look at Global Day now, and calling back to some of the stuff I said earlier, I think the best thing is that it is got this life, and it feels like every year is better than the last.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not it is inherently decentralized. There's some people putting over an umbrella word or some common things with the video rooms and stuff, but Coderetreat itself was so inherently decentralized, and it was intended to be able to be run by anybody.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't there for like, you have to call me to come do it, or you have to call Audie or Jem or something like that. Anybody can do it, and it's open and an easy structure to come into. And it feels like Global Day sort of took that philosophy of, it's just this thing, anybody can do it, and took it to that level of anybody can kind of take part and be part of the organizing of a large global event. I mean, if you think about it, and I do every year when it happens, is like, if you've got 150 cities, you have like a couple thousand developers around the world doing the same thing on one day. And it's got to be one of the largest global events that happens every year. And it is and it's done with what seems like a light touch organizing.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got people who are making sure things are good and doing the centralized sign up and stuff. But on the day of, you've got 150 facilitators and 150 hosts running these all on their own. And like you had said, Gemma, if you don't tap in and you're not taking part in the video chats and all that, it's still okay. Like, you've got all of these people doing this thing and getting the benefit from it. And it's just so great to see that. And over time, we're on like the 4th or 5th generation of people organizing Global Day. So even the organization of it is a very decentralized kind of pulling through, and people step up. And I just love seeing every year the community. It holds the ideal of a community-run event, and it has since the beginning. And 10 years on, it doesn't seem to be stopping from that. And it's seeing what happens this year, especially with the pandemic, and like there's going to have to be innovations around how to effectively do remote Coderetreats. And I know people have got experience doing it. So having those people come in and help share that experience and how to do it is going to be really wonderful to see. And it's just so exciting every year seeing it. 10 years is a long time. Yeah. We were all different 10 years ago.
Indeed.
That is true. Yeah. Well, I think the best thing to say is that everybody who will see a Coderetreat happening this year, remote one, should just try it out. It's not and hang in there in a way, because if you're new to this, it will be weird in the beginning. So try just to experiment, to get out of your comfort zone, as Corey always says. I think that's a way to try and learn things, and it will be great to see more of that happening.
Yeah.
Well said.
Okay, so thank you so much for having this conversation with me. We talked about memories of Coderetreat and about the history and our experiences. It was really great. It was really great seeing you, both of you, since
hopefully it won't
for
be
years. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, and for everyone from our audience, don't forget to think, design, and work smart.